What's a time you felt something was off and were right about it? My husband then boyfriend were watching our nieces and nephew plus a few of their friends, ages 5-10, overnight. His stepbrother at the time brought over some friends. Stepbrother and us were 19-20. Friends were 24-27. One guy walked through the kitchen and I immediately felt uncomfortable. They made the excuse stepbrother needed to get something. I rounded up all 12 kids into one bedroom I knew had a working lock and no window to tell scary stories which I knew would convince all of them to listen. My husband followed the group of guys through his dad's house until the one I didn't like threatened him. Turns out stepbrother knew we'd be alone with a dozen kids and decided to rob the place, and creepy friend planned to get to know my 10-year-old and 7-year-old nieces. I heard a fight, told the kids to lock the door behind me after whispering the password. I think it was lemon drop. Don't open it until I say the password. I stood outside that door until the cops showed up. Husband ended up with a broken nose and 2 dislocated fingers. I ended up getting dragged from the door and earned a dislocated shoulder fighting back. Creepy friend had several warrants for inappropriate acts with children. Father-in-law divorced very quickly when stepbrother's mom defended it. That's been 8ish years ago and the kids called us their bodyguards for a long time. You and your husband freaking rock. My house was robbed. I had gotten off work pretty late as usual and was driving home. Just as I turned the corner I got the biggest sinking sensation in my stomach and all I could think was the house was robbed. And this is the first time this type of feeling was so specific and ominous. I'm putting the keys in the door feeling full dread, and opening the door everything is everywhere. Broken, turned over, missing. And I just stood in the doorway looking around at how surreal that feeling was. That night I couldn't figure out why I felt that as I was pulling up to my house. Maybe I had left a light on and my brain subconsciously recognized that the light wasn't on anymore. Or maybe I had overheard saw something in the neighborhood when I was sleeping the night before taking a walk leaving for work. It just really freaked me out, having that all come true, with such an intense feeling of inexplicable dread leading up to it. When I was 5, my aunt was engaged to be married. I was at my grandmother's house when she brought the guy to meet her. They talked all their boring grown-up talk for a while when the guy noticed me playing in the corner. He was so creepy. He was like the human version of a Ken doll. Artificial tan, not too short but not too long blonde hair, white and straight teeth. When I read the Nolep story Third Parent for the first time, I imagined him. Yeah, it freaked me out as a kid just how perfectly handsome this man was. And even though I was only 5, I had liked boys before so I shouldn't have thought he was icky. But he was. And he spoke to me like an adult would talk to an adult. Not like how grown-ups talk to kids with the fake sweet voice they attempt so they don't come off as threatening. Like this guy was already sure I was gonna be cool with him. Confident. But creepy. He breathed on me. A hot breath blew right on my shoulders and neck. He smelled like expensive cologne and hair products but faintly at first until he got very close to me. I couldn't even give him eye contact because all I could see was the knitting of his sweater and the start of his 5 o'clock shadow. I didn't like him. I told that to anyone who would listen. But the opinions of your 5-year-old niece when you're 35 and childless don't call off rushed marriages with wealthy men. My mom made us spend time with them. I don't know if it was their nice condo in a rich neighborhood or that my mom honestly had missed her sister when she was out in San Diego for a few years trying to find a man. They just did everything together right up until the wedding. During one of these visits my soon-to-be uncle told me that the hot tub would boil me into a soup and I should stay with him in the pool while my aunt and mom were in there. I didn't want to be around that guy, though, so I followed my mom. My anxiety picked up when she kept pressuring me into getting in. I cried about not wanting to be cooked. She still laughs about it 24 years later. I never told her where I got that idea. The wedding was beautiful. I envy it to this day, I swear. It was at the local botanical garden. At night so it was lit by little white lights. Every girl under the age of 12 that was even a little related to us was a flower girl, including me, my cousins, my mom's cousin's daughter I never heard of who traveled over 2,000 miles just for the wedding, my uncle's sister-in-law's daughter, and a few of girls from church. I think there were 6 or 7 of us in all. It was extravagant. A month later my aunt walked in on her husband jerking it to some kids playing outside so they got divorced just as quickly as they married. Long story short, my friend and I were trying to reach another friend to hang out and chill. Friend 2 didn't answer his phone. Went to knock at his house. His mom told us he wasn't home. Friend 2 wasn't feeling so well mentally in those times. On the way back, friend 1 and me looked at each other and we only needed to cross gazes to know we were thinking the same thing. We took care not to mention it directly for some reason. We took out our bikes in the grey, foggy evening and rode under light rain, and tried to think of and go check every meaningful spot friend 2 could have thought about when deciding to do the thing. Knowing him at that time, it only made sense it was going to be some kind of meaningful place. Another gut feeling we couldn't quite explain. After a whole evening of not finding him, it was way past dark and we kinda forced ourselves to believe that everything was most likely alright. We were panicking for nothing and we'd see him the next day. Maybe the gloomy atmosphere of that night gave us ideas? We didn't know. We went home. Later, I don't really remember how much later, the three of us had an honest conversation about our suspicions at the time. Friend 2 confirmed to us that, on that very night, he was standing at the only very obvious meaningful spot that we were stupid to forget to check, rope in hand, staring at the tree he had chosen. He also managed to convince himself he was okay and went back home that night too. No thanks to us. When I was a teen I was told to help my grandma out of our car and when I opened the door I looked in her eyes, felt something was wrong and yelled for my mom. When my mom rushed over my grandma looked and acted just fine. My mom saw how distraught I looked and trusted me I guess because she took my grandma straight to the emergency. Turns out my grandma had a mini stroke and was vulnerable to having another one. 3 years ago this August I began noticing my grandpa napping for longer than usual, massaging his neck, and not wanting to go on his bike rides. And the bike ride was a daily ritual for over 30 years. I asked him how he was feeling and everything could have been chalked up to getting older. But I insisted that he get to the doctor. He was diagnosed with leukemia and died within 3 days. I'll always miss him but I know that without his diagnosis, a lot of our extended family wouldn't have traveled to visit him before he died. I just wish I felt the need to ask about his health sooner. I was at the gas station with my sister and she was about to get out of the car to pump gas. We were pretty low, but I had a horrid feeling about the place and my spine felt cold. I grabbed her wrist and said to go to the gas station down the road instead. She noticed my expression, promptly started the car, and we went to the gas station about 3 minutes down the road. In that 3 minutes a shootout happened at the gas station we had just left. That's amazing. Glad you are all good. When I was in the military and in training there was a training officer who was kinda creepy around the females, and more so than your usual socially awkward creeper. Turns out he had picked out a couple of them, groomed them, and initiated a non-consensual relationship with one of them after repeatedly raping her. In a strenuous training environment candidates can't give consent period, especially when someone who is in clear authority over them uses that as leverage to obtain sexual favors. Homeboy was a creeper. When I was around 10 or so I had some friends over. When the time came to take them home I had a really bad feeling. Something internally was screaming at me don't go with them. It's a very bad day to go out. I went anyway and we ended up getting in a car accident. I was the only one in the car who got hurt. Once, when I was about 18, I was drinking with my older friends, 24-27-year-old. We were hanging one of their friends' place, and these dudes were kinda seedy, like lots of underage kids, and whole lot of weed on the table. I think there was M also. I got this dirty feeling and I bailed. There was some lame excuse. Bam. An hour later there was a hostage type of dealio. The dude who owned the house had flipped on something trivial and pulled out his shotgun. I work at a jail. Once had a feeling that a particular detainee was behaving unusually. I tried to talk to my co-workers about it, but they told me I was imaging things. By the end of the night we're donning riot gear and wrestling him. My gut was right, and now I always trust myself even when others don't. Go with a gut feeling. Don't ignore it. It's our human instinct and intuition kicking in and sensing the negative energy. A neighbor tried inviting me and a couple neighborhood kids in his house during mid-2012 and I said no to the video games and candy. But my friends didn't and I knew something was up, but my dad said I can't possibly ruin some middle-aged man's life without proof, and last year he was caught by police after Google started an investigation. He was caught and imprisoned for child pornography and touching the neighborhood kids. A kid at my school way back was having a lot of pain in her collarbone while we were at camp. She thought it was some strain because we were doing a lot of physical activities. The pain got worse and she went to the hospital. Turned out that somehow her collarbone was chipped and a vein was snagged on it. Thank the heavens it didn't rupture. What the fuck? Getting your throat slit internally by your own skeleton is honestly the worst thing I've ever heard. And I, an arachnophobe, read that whole freaking story where somebody literally for the first time in years didn't check their straw, sucked out a spider from it and it bit op icant. I went to middle school with a dude who always gave me the creeps. I was told, both by other students and by adults, that I was being mean and I should be friends with him even though he made me uncomfortable. It was a small private school and there was big push for everybody to play happy family regardless of circumstances. He had this fake smile grimace he'd do that just made my skin crawl, and I couldn't stand even trying to make eye contact with him. Well, most of decade later it comes out that he's a repeat offending rapist, including raping and beating his girlfriend and posting photos of it when she tried to break up with him. When the news broke I emailed a bunch of the people we used to go to school with about it, and their response was pretty much uniformly, "She's clearly lying to try to ruin his life. He'd never do something like that." Seriously? You can't fathom that the dude who was already making inappropriate sexual comments to female classmates at age 12, which the teachers never shut down and just considered funny quirky, by the way, and would joke about harming animals, could possibly be a sexual predator? She's clearly lying to try to ruin his life. He'd never do something like that. 99.9% certain that's how everyone who likes the perpetrator reacts when sexual assault comes to light. That time my back pain turned out to be cancer. We still joke in my family about checking WebMD for back pain and it actually being cancer. I woke up really anxious one day, like I knew something bad was going to happen, just in a lot of distress to the point that I was considering calling out of work that day. That afternoon my boyfriend got a call that his father had shot himself and was in the hospital. He is okay now, but it was really strange. My online friend used to have a girlfriend who raised all the little red flags in my brain. One day he comes to me, so excited to tell me that his girlfriend was pregnant. I told him I was happy for him, but something didn't seem right. I sat on it the next few days while I was in school processing what I was feeling. Maybe I was jealous or something. Probably should have been focusing more on my biology teacher TBH. He comes to me later that week, devastated. She miscarried, and it was twins. This poor man had been reduced to tears and turmoil and I could hardly console him because live states away. That odd feeling of mine hadn't gone away yet. Oh, but it doesn't end there. No. Not long after that, he comes back excited because apparently only one of the babies had died and there was still a chance for the other one. At this point, I knew something was up. This was wrong. I did later find out that this kind of thing could actually happen, but it's kinda rare. It was either later that day or the next where he tells me what happened next. His girlfriend lied. All of it was fake. There was no baby, just some actually insane woman lying to the man that loved her to make him stay, which mind you he had not suggested leaving her. She knew he wanted kids and she abused that knowledge. Yet, they don't talk anymore. I've trusted my intuition since then. TLDR. Friend of mine gets excited because his girlfriend is pregnant only to find out she was lying to him to make him stay with her. Am surviving twin. Can confirm does sometimes happen. Obviously not in this case, though. What a wild ride. Your poor friend. When I was about 14 I woke in the middle of the night once to the phone ringing. This was pretty common as my mom worked shift work in the emergency room at the hospital and she'd get called in if they were short staffed. While trying to get back to sleep though I felt like something was different. After some time I went out to investigate to find my dad's truck running in the driveway. By the time I went outside to ask what was going on the truck was gone. I had just assumed that maybe there was a problem with my mom's car and she borrowed his truck to get to work. I went back to sleep but still was a bit uneasy. I woke up in the morning and my mom told all of the kids that our grandmother had died. The phone call was my grandfather telling my dad that she had a stroke and was going to the hospital. My dad jumped in his truck and left immediately and made the 2-hour drive to the hospital she was at and was able to see her just before she passed. Sorry for your loss. I'm glad your dad got to say goodbye. I once had a feeling in the pit of my stomach that my GF at the time was fricking someone else. Had to know, so I went to see about it and I was right. Funny thing. Sorry man. Was 16 and puking tons of bile. Knew I'd be dehydrated and asked my mom to take me to the where she worked. Before being discharged I mentioned how my right side kind of hurt and was a bit raised. They decided to do an ultrasound to see if I had a gallstone or something. Took a really long time. Turns out I had an utterly massive tumor on my liver. It was removed 2 weeks later and basically exploded because it had outgrown its blood supply and started to rot. I would have bled internally and died had it not been found when it was. After that my liver failed. One night I woke up and puked in the sink. Couldn't make it to the toilet. Was going to rinse it down and go to bed. But something told me to turn on the light. Sink was full of blood. Only positive was the esophageal varices that caused it. Finally got me listed for transplant at 17. Finally got my transplant at 19. Once when I was 22 I believe I had a checkup at the hospital with my neurologist. I also have epilepsy and decided to drop by there to say hi to my mom before I left. I mentioned my shoulders felt heavy and that I felt off. She told me to go home and lie down. While waiting for the valet I had a seizure and landed in wood chips. Woke up on a gurney confused to why there were wood chips there with me. I'm so glad that happened because I could have been driving when it happened and could have hurt someone. That's actually why I don't drive anymore. Even though I could drive legally if I'm a year seizure free and medicated. I'm actually 4 years seizure free now. But even so, if I did drive and kill someone, since I know I'm epileptic I could go to jail for vehicular manslaughter. Screw that. It seems a little ridiculous that you can legally drive if you're 1 year seizure free but also legally be charged with manslaughter if you do have a seizure and someone dies. The law needs to pick a lane. I've been at my job for going on 6 years and have been through many new employees that just aren't cut out for the work we do. Last spring we were in desperate need of a new driver and my boss suggested one of his buddies from school that he's known all his life. I bluntly told him I didn't think it was a good idea as he mentioned his friend had been in a motorcycle accident years prior. Not even a month into him working with us he got into an accident with 2 other vehicles when he wasn't paying attention and now we're in a lawsuit with both parties. The second guy that my boss suggested was a man with a bad attitude and no teeth. For whatever reason my boss hired him and things went smooth for a few months, but then he claimed he fell and injured himself on the job and put in a workman's compensation claim, but we have inside information that he was in a car accident a week prior. If my boss actually listened to me we wouldn't have a lawsuit and workman's comp case on our hands. This is more your boss is a bit naive and you pay attention to facts rather than a hunch. 2 days before my mom died at the age of 43, we were on our way to Florida for my spring break. I was 15 and really looking forward to spending some time with her since she'd been diagnosed with cancer 3 years before and promised that this trip would be like she didn't even have it. She promised we'd talk about boys, she'd show me how to do my hair and my makeup, and we could stay up late and talk. Basically, all the stuff that having cancer and undergoing aggressive chemo makes really hard for anyone to do with their kids. We ended up stopping on our way out of town. It was a 12-hour drive for a bathroom break and she started having a panic attack. Her panic attack ended up lasting for 2 hours in this tiny town. My aunt, her sister, who was traveling with us, called my stepdad and told him to meet her at the exits to pick up my mom. She said she'd get plane tickets so my mom wouldn't have to drive. My mom was always more comfortable flying. He comes, picks up my mom, and she's calm and cheerful again. She opens her door before they leave and asks my brother and I to give her a kiss and a hug, promising she'll be down there to see us in 2 days. When I went to hug her, I kissed her lips, we're that family, and her lips were cold like ice. I remember thinking immediately, I just kissed a dead woman. Instead of saying anything, I pulled back, hugged her again, We pinky promised about Florida, and then she left. 2 days later at 4 AM, 6 hours before her flight was to happen, she died. Ended up spending my spring break driving back from Florida and burying my mom. It took me a few years to tell my family about how her lips felt when I kissed her goodbye. How I wasn't able to shake that feeling that she was going to die even while we prepped the place we rented and made plans with her joining us soon in mind. It's still unnerving. I'm sorry for your loss. I was 16 when my mom was undergoing aggressive chemo, and the second I read what you wrote about her lips, it brought back memories that my mom's lips were always cold during that time too. Lucky for us though, she recovered and is still cancer free. Phone rang. Caller ID showed my friend's mom's name, which wasn't off because she lived with her mom. I knew before I picked up the phone that it really was her mom calling me to tell me that her daughter died. I was right. I had this boyfriend my sophomore year of high school. He invited me to dinner, and let's just say the living situation was bleak. He lived in a garage with his family without heat or water, and the place was full of garbage, bugs, and smoke. His parents chain smoked and let him do the same at 16. I broke it off soon after because he was creepy in a dangerous sort of way, and my pity for his home life could only coast the relationship so far. Anyway, after I graduated, he gets arrested for molesting his little sisters for the past 5 or so years. He begged me not to call CPS on his family when we were dating. I regret not having the guts back in high school. 2. I have a good one. I was hanging out with my boyfriend and we had decided to order a pizza. We had been waiting a pretty long time, well over a half hour, and the pizza still wasn't there. We were getting ready to call them to see what was up, and I nervously brought up the possibility that they had been in an accident. I'd had the feeling that had happened for the last 10 minutes. I have anxiety and my mind constantly jumps to the worst case scenario, so I'd been trying to ignore it. My BF assured me that everything was fine and went to call the pizza place. My BF comes back into the room a little while later, shocked. He told me that the driver had been in an accident but he was fine. Thank goodness. I drive for Domino's and we have driver instincts that usually go off when we look at an unnumbered house, and it just feels like that's the destination. My driver instincts are on alert because of this thread, and I work tomorrow. Y'all marking me nervous, lol. I had this odd feeling when pulling up to a red light. I felt like I shouldn't pull all the way up to the line, so I didn't. Sure enough, a car flew through the red light and got hit. They ended up about 6 inches from my front bumper. Had I pulled up to the line and with the dump truck behind me was as close as he was, those cars would have absolutely crushed mine given the speeds they both were going. I had twin newborns in the car with me. That last line made me nauseous. So glad you pulled back. I work hospitality and am in fine dining. Unlike the majority of food and beverage staff, I've stayed put for a long time and haven't left this restaurant for 3 years. I've had 2 deliberate walkouts in this time, both by the same person. The first time our bartender chased him down the road. Our bartender was a big guy I would not mess with, but this guy told him to pee off and just kept walking. Anyway, we found some photos online on some community Facebook pages as he had done it from previous places. Anyway, 2 years later, I had a man who looked very different but behaved very similar to this guy. First thing he did was sit at a table with people he didn't know, which was off for a 5-star hotel. He also ordered the same drinks, which I somehow remembered. Anyway, I had a hunch this was the same guy, so I informed security and the duty manager. We physically blocked the 2 exits while our security talked to this guy to determine if it was him. It was, and he got pee off and pushed past us, only to realize he was trapped in. We called the police, only to be told it was a civil matter to be dealt with internally. Bulls, as his tab was only $70. In the end he just pushed a few people and kept walking. He probably won't be back anytime soon. The day we almost caught a notorious dine and dasher. I was in 1st grade, just after lunch when I started bawling. I was absolutely inconsolable, sobbing uncontrollably and proclaiming that my pet Anoli had just died. It took my teacher almost 10 minutes to convince me to calm down, saying that I shouldn't overreact unless I knew for certain that something bad had happened. Turns out, the Anoli had indeed died, and had been discovered at about 1:30 PM. Never understood how I knew. Stories like this are sad, but also so great. The concept that we have these as yet to be understood links to those people and things we love is marvelous. When my husband and I were dating, we'd sneak off to frickin' the car behind this old store. We were teenagers. One night we went there and I told him not to put the car in park. I felt like something was off. We sat there for a couple of minutes and nothing happened. Then, I saw a flash of someone moving behind the car a ways back. We left. The next day, someone had been stabbed in that area by a man wearing the same clothes that I had seen. Glad we left, or that would have been some Lovers Lane murder bulls. A guy came over to a friend's house one night and there was just something skeevy about him. I ditched the party and forgot about him. A few years later we heard he had molested his cousin's kid, but nobody could prove it, so he never went to jail over it. Best part of the story is a few years ago, he lost both arms in a farming accident. Karma is a bee. I have posted this before, but it's worth repeating. In 2013 I was given a full scholarship to do a course at the Central European University. The scholarship included airfare, accommodation, meals, everything. It was such a great opportunity. A few days before I was scheduled to book all my flights etc., I just felt like I shouldn't go. There was no reason for me to feel this way at all. So I, to the great disgust of my colleagues, turned down the scholarship. The day after I was scheduled to leave, my previously healthy mother became ill. A few days after that she was admitted to hospital with double pneumonia. She was put in a medically induced coma, and 10 days after that we had to switch off life support. If I had taken the scholarship I would have been a 12-hour flight away and would not have gotten to see her before they put her in the coma. Instead, I was the last person to speak to her. She was 53. I'm really sorry you lost your mom. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.